I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try.
Hello and welcome to Call to Action, the go-to podcast for anyone trying to make sense of the world of marketing, business and beyond. In an industry that is a minefield of utter bollocks, we aim to capture our heroes and allies from the front line to have a chinwag with. It's like Pokemon Go, with the single but vital exception that it's not a short-term bandwagon of shite. It's brought to you by Gasp, and I'm Giles Edwards. This week, we went around slurping muddy water from puddles in order to win the sympathy of Shane Stewart, brand man, running man, and fizzy drink saviour. The brand director at XOXO Soda, a drink that's not only low on sugar, but high in the tiny little organisms that do kind things to your innards. Shane's career has been devoted to building brands that are incapable of blending in. Before that, Shane was applying his brand brain to establishing a large and fiercely loyal audience for Moju, a ginger and turmeric shot that essentially rinses out tired brains. And in between being a leading brander of invigorating liquids, he also started his own running club, Step by Steppers, to help people dealing with grief to feel less alone. Shane says, do what you love, start something, pursue a dream, talk to people, get out and do stuff, push yourself and lean on people. Don't procrastinate, believe in yourself, be excited, you deserve it. Welcome to the show, Shane.
Wow, welcome to you. I don't quite have the introduction for you as you do there for me, mate. I might have to get you to send me that, and I can play it back on the daily every morning.
Yeah. So I'll wait, Shane. You can write something.
Yeah.
7 quick fires, mate. England or Australia?
England.
Leeds or London?
Leeds.
Builder's brew or functional soda?
Functional soda.
Monster munch or monster pickle shot?
Monster pickle shots.
Right, wake and bake or wake and shake?
Wake and shake.
Right, 3 more. Bacardi Breezer or Barcody Breezer?
Very good. Barcody Breezer.
Run club or walk to the pub?
It's going to have to be Run Club.
Nice. Right, and last one. Here comes the hot stepper or every step you take?
Here comes the hot stepper.
Nice. You sailed through those. They were too easy, I think.
Yeah, no, I don't know. There were some very tricky ones there. I mean, I could merge a few of those together. Run to the pub. Yeah, there's a few there. They were good ones. They were good.
Run to the pub. That's a good compromise. So we're all warmed up. So to start the show, we always ask guests about their path to where they are now. So can you start telling us a little bit about your background and what your first ever jobs were and first proper kind of career job?
Yeah, my first jobs were hospitality. So I worked in various bars in Leeds, and then I also lived in Australia, which is why the Australia-England question got me, because I absolutely love Australia. So yeah, I worked in bars and stuff across there. And so my sort of background before I got my first proper job, as you call it, is hospitality. And yeah, you don't half learn a lot about the world and life and yourself when you're working behind a bar and dealing with some drunkards. But yeah, it definitely sets you up for a career, and probably why I've then gone for a career in FMCG, because I don't know, you kind of have that little bit of the old on trade, off trade, and yeah, there's a nice little link to hospitality there, and being able to deal with people on a daily basis.
Yeah, hospitality is really front line, right?
Yeah, I mean, it literally is. That's like it either makes or break you. When I talk to people that have got a hospitality background now, you know, when they're 16, 17, 18, even, you know, to their early 20s, however many years. And I think the one thing for me is that in the UK, I don't think hospitality is taken as seriously as it is across in Europe and across the pond. It's a very, very cutthroat. It's a very hard-working industry. And I do feel like in the UK, we take it as this sort of entry-level job. It takes a certain type of person, not to big myself up there saying I am that type of person. It takes a me, all right? No, but it is a test of character. And it is one of those jobs where every day is different. Yeah, you might be behind the bar, but it is all depend on what customers you've got coming in. Some customers are absolute arseholes, and then some of the best that you can ever be, and they give you that reason why you do it in the first place type thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I come from a how would I describe it? Let's call it a pub family. So my dad spent far too many years in pubs with us
Yeah.
growing up, and
Yeah.
one of my brothers was a publican for years, funnily enough, until he left London and moved to Australia, where he gave up the
Yep.
trade. There's certainly something very cultural in the UK with pubs. They're so significant to our kind of, I suppose, the geographies we live in. Maybe we take them for granted, but yeah, you don't forget a good pub, and you don't forget good service in a good pub.
Yeah, massively. And I think now more than ever, everyone's sort of like, is chasing that best Guinness. Not that this is a plug for Guinness or anything. And again, especially in London, there's a lot of social media around it of, where is that best Guinness? And that's, as you say, like there is that probably the big culture in the UK and that community feel. But I think it's grown sevenfold since the rise of social media, like most things has, of like finding that perfect pub and finding that perfect pour. You want to be somewhere people have seen, you want to be there with your mates, and you want to be having, you want to be having a good time in a place that you feel comfortable. When we go to the pubs now, we feel for the bartenders, we feel for the people that are working there, especially when you're watching over and they're having to deal with somebody that's asking for the 20th Guinness, and they probably should be calling it a night.
Yeah, I've been there. Definitely been there before. If we rewind a little bit, just to get some background on kind of growing up and any route you took through education, I have it down here that you studied urban and environmental planning.
Yeah, I went to Sheffield Hallam University. I originally wanted to study architecture, like sort of like fully at university, and then sadly I lost my grandparents during A levels, so my education took a little bit of a decline. So then I was like, sort of like, well, what is the next best thing? And still in that same sort of like sector. So I felt like, I applied for that course, and then I enjoyed it. I liked it. But I think as most people, I don't know, there's probably some sort of starting percentage on how many people actually end up in the degree that they do. But I found that it wasn't particularly the right sort of like career path for me, as much as I enjoyed it. And I do think university is more about the experience and the 3 or 4 years that you spend there, and really sort of like find yourself from that 18 to 21, 22-year-old period. But yeah, so that was my background in terms of education. But yeah, I just never went into that as a career.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons, as you know, I think we asked that question is just I like to emphasize almost how unimportant doing the right degree course is, because I think so much is expected of people at an age where they can't possibly know what they want to do, to commit themselves to 3+ years to study something that might not be right. And as you say, so much of the benefit is everything around that actual choice rather than the choice itself.
Yeah, massively. And I've met so many, marketers in now that I'm in marketing, that didn't do marketing as a degree, but it is more about the experience and that sort of like 3 years about understanding who you are and what you want. Because you're right, to your point, like nobody knows what you want to be doing when you're 17 or 16, well, even younger, when you're 15, applying to do your A levels to get into uni. Like how the hell are you supposed to know what you do? And you get a lot of inspiration from those that are around you and parents and family and what they're doing. So sort of, I suppose that's sort of these top level jobs, like it might be like doctors and lawyers and things like that. I suppose you've got, if you're surrounded by that, then that's what you can sort of like, you're more likely to go into and study and finish up doing. But I suppose, I don't know how I'd categorize it, but some of the other sort of like industries, I don't think follow the path that you think might need to get there through university.
Yeah, I totally agree. We describe you as a brand man on the intro, which is clearly accurate. When did you start kind of thinking about brands as, I guess, as a thing, to use a technical language? Like, was it in Australia? Was it in hospitality? Were you noticing what brands were more popular or what they kind of offered?
Yeah, I think it stemmed from hospitality. I don't think I probably recognised it as much whilst I was doing that. So it's definitely quite subliminal, but definitely like, cooler. Whether it's, you also mentioned Bacardi in like one of those questions, right? It's whether like, the rums and the whiskies and the spirits and the vodkas and gins, whatever it might be, there's like sort of like big name brands like Bacardi, like Smirnoff, whoever it might be. But then also like these sort of like challenger brands that you'd see, and they'd always look a bit different. The bottle shape would be different. And we some of the bars that I used to run in for working for a company in Leeds, we often ran incentives, and it would usually be like for a brand to say, sell a certain amount of in a night, in a week, whatever it might be, and you can get your chance to win like a holiday with the bar. So then I started to notice, okay, like these difference in brands and what they're doing. And then, yeah, you're right. I think it was Australia where I started to really notice like just nice things, cool things. Australia's just cool. So it's like I was living in like just living the life, like living in like Bondi, going down to Bondi Beach, you know, like the smoothie bars, there's the yoga plate, like everything's like branded really nicely. And that's when you start to realize that has a psychological effect on what you're like, what you want to do, what you want to buy. At times it doesn't even, you know, with the price of things, you just think, well, I want to buy that because it looks cool. And we might jump into things, you know, in later in the chats, but it's like, there is that definitely that element of like buying something because of the trendiness of it, you know, which I think is just a massive part of marketing as a whole. And consumer packaged goods, FMCG, like just having something tangible in your hand and being like, this is, you know, this is cool. This is made by something somewhere, somebody, you know, now I've paid money for it and it's in my hand. So it's that sort of like journey, that psychological journey of all that as well started to interest me.
Yeah. Did you spend most of your time in and around Sydney, or did you move about at all?
When I first got there, I flew to Sydney, landed in Sydney, and spent a few months there. And then I actually went and did my my farm work pretty early doors because I met a mate there that was at the end of his first year. You need to go do your 3 months sort of like farm work at the time anyway to extend your visa, and he needed to do that. So me and a couple of others, we went with him. So we kind of got our farm work out pretty early, and then after that went back to Sydney, which by the way was like probably one of the best 3 months of my life. Like, at first I thought, what the hell am I doing? But I learned so much in that 3 months. It's just a part of my life and a journey in my life that I will never do again. I will never ever work, you know, be on a banana farm again. Like, and the term's called humping, so it sounds a bit rude, but you're literally humping bananas. And anyone that's listening that's humped bananas will know like how crazy all this is. But yeah, you're like cutting like 90-kilogram banana bunches whilst like dodging snakes and rat piss and all sorts. And yeah, you learn a lot about yourself during farm work. And I think they've actually taken that element away from the visa on Australia now. But yeah, so yeah, I went did that, and then but he didn't think I was going to talk about rat piss on here. But there we go. And humping bananas. I think we found the title. Yeah. So then I went back to Sydney, and then I actually moved to Melbourne. I really enjoyed both Melbourne and Sydney. Melbourne was great for culture, and actually like again for like startup scene. There was a lot more like niche brands, niche stuff going on. Sydney was a little bit more mainstream, but Bondi was where I think Bondi has my heart. It's just something about like being down at the beach, that sort of lifestyle, outdoorsy, you know, just looking after yourself type thing, but having a good time whilst doing it.
Yeah, my heart is also in Sydney, and quite a few of my family. Lovely place. I assume there weren't many brands you were exposed to in the farm work, humping bananas.
No, just banana brands, just bananas, and cheap beer at the liquor store. I can't remember what they call it, bottle-o, don't they?
That's it. Yeah.
And I think so that was the brand at the time. Whilst I was doing farm work, the brands I was looking for there was definitely the cheapest. I mean, we were eating like tuna and rice, and then drinking the cheapest beers at the weekend, and humping bananas all week. So
when we talk about brands, sometimes we have like this line graph. You got brand at one end and commodity at the other. So you were knee deep in commodity there, and then you went into brand in Bondi, exactly. I suppose. So how did you end up at Moju then? So you that kind of like gave you a real kind of fire and an interest in brand. Did you then just seek out the first opportunity you could, or did you take? How soon did you take further training? Because I know you've done the Ritson Mini MBA, so it's encouraging someone who recognises that you don't need to have trained in marketing to start there. It's nice and encouraging that you have subsequently sought it out.
Yeah. So actually, there was a brand I worked at before Moju, which was my like gateway into my career, into marketing, into FMCG, and it's an ice cream brand that still exists called Northern Block, based in Leeds. I knew of the guys; they were setting up the company whilst just before I was like moving to Australia, and so I started following them on Instagram. And I was kind of like not keeping tabs on them, but I would see the posts and stuff like that they were posting whilst I was away. When I got back, I needed to make that decision of like, what do I want to do? Do I want to pursue that career in urban planning? Do I want to go back and do a master's in something? Do I start like a career in something else? All I did, mate, was actually just searched, because I was living back in Leeds at the time. I just searched like cool companies. I literally remember doing it. I was actually sat in the old Tetley Brewery, and I sat there to search cool companies in Leeds. And I reached out to a few, just being like, hey, I've literally just got back from Australia. I'm looking for like, whether it's part-time work, full-time work, just really want to work with somewhere cool. And I actually, and I've kind of reached out to Northern Block about that as well, because they were doing something different. They were changing the way that the ice cream scene is seen, in terms of, you know, very traditionally ice creams like, you know, cows, fields, clouds, like the farm and all that type of thing. Whereas these guys were doing something very like urban, very monochrome. It was black and white. It was like ice cream in the city. It was about an indulgent ice cream, and the tagline was like, "Fuck it, it's ice cream, enjoy it." And it really like clicked with me. Yeah, I ended up getting a sort of like a brand ambassador, full-time brand ambassador role with them, and going around the country doing various events and pushing the brand. And then I think, I just loved that so much that that's when I knew I'd cemented myself within marketing, and wanted to do everything I could to sort of like further better myself and understand the marketing world. Because that was very like kind of like entry level for me, just to, to be out there and doing it. But then it was just the networking, trade shows, because we were like, we were exhibiting at every trade show we could. And I was networking, I was talking to absolutely everybody. And that's when I actually first met the Moju guys, met the founders there, Rich and Charlie, at one of the trade shows. And yeah, kind of kept in contact with them. And it is quite funny because actually before I started at Northern Block, I was working in a coffee shop part-time. So I kind of went back to that hospitality background that we spoke about. We started stocking Moju ginger shots in there. So it was quite funny actually, because like that was my first instance of it. And then suddenly, a year or two later, flash forward, I'm working in the industry and I'm chatting to the founders 2 years later. So I was at Northern Block for nearly 4 years. I then, reached out and applied to Moju when they had this brand manager role available. And I actually wrote 3 brands down before that of brands that I really wanted to work for. Moju was top of the list. I did everything I could to make sure I got that position. I changed the label on the water bottle, changed the label to my CV so that the shot was like a Shane shot, had my picture on there. And then because the bottle's so small, you obviously couldn't put too much on there. So I put a CV inside the bottle it was just a QR code on it. Which then went to an online page with my full CV and sort of like what the reason why they should hire me. So essentially, it was a message in a bottle. Sent that through, and I think they received that and was pretty much like, bloody hell, like here we go, like we've done it, we've found the person.
Nice.
But I didn't know that, and I still followed the process of all the interviews and the chats and the talks. And then it was when I started that they were like, yeah, we pretty much knew it was going to be you when you did that. So, it was a bit, that was a big thing for me. It didn't seem big at the time because for me, it was natural just to do what I want, just to do everything I could to get that job. Like I was determined, I'd sort of like manifested it, and manifestation's massive for me. Yeah. So I essentially had manifested it, and then, and I made it come, like, sounds like quite weird, but I made my dream come true because at the time that was my dream and my passion was to make sure I got that job at Moju, and I got it. And then, learn probably like most definitely advanced all my marketing knowledge there. Brilliant company to work for in that sense. And then did my mini MBA masters. Mark Ritson did that course. And then that's when I was like, right, okay, we actually use that structure to a lot of our stuff that we did at Moju. A lot of our marketing tactics kind of came through that. So, you can look back at someone doing 3 or 4 years of university, or somebody that's done essentially 6 to 8 weeks on that course, or 12 weeks, I think it might be. And you can essentially base a whole strategy off of that. And Moju actually put me through that. A couple of the other guys had been on it. They pushed me. They wanted me to do it. And I jumped at the chance. Because I think for me, like, just never stop learning. Even now, like even me now, I'm not a master at anything, I wouldn't say. And I don't think I will be in 5 years, because I think there's always, trends are always changing. The marketing world is changing. Never stop learning. So when they said about doing that, I was like, yeah, I jumped at the chance.
I love the way you applied for Moju, but there's a really, nice, simple brand kind of example there, right? Just doing something to stand out and be memorable. I often, or very recently, have been talking to a few grads who are struggling to get jobs, and then when you ask them what they're doing, and they're just doing exactly the same as everyone else and applying sending the same templated CV to the same people and not doing anything differently. I remember shortly after lockdown, we gave a young guy some work experience at Gasp, simply because he wrote a short email that just said, look, I'm so bored, I've completed Netflix over lockdown, can I come in and do some stuff with you? And I just something as ridiculous as that just stood out from all of the others claiming to be,
I think it's the honesty there, isn't it? Just going like, you know what, like, and it's like, you've got to respect that. Yeah. And I honestly, I do sometimes. I think that's better than anything. Like someone that just wanting to be like, look, I genuinely want to like come and do something here, rather than be like, the classic CV. And we're doing it now, like, and we'll get onto it, I'm sure. But XOXO, like, we're in the process of really, really building a strong brand and building a team.
Time, weather, and... We interrupt this podcast to announce that we will never interrupt this podcast with ads. Ads that awkwardly nudge you to contact the pod's host, Giles Edwards. Only last week, some pod listening companies did just that, calling for guidance on building a funnel. But we're not asking you to do that. Nope. Anyway, back to the show.
My first sort of proper paid weekly job was a holiday job as a student which was driving a forklift truck at the Ribena factory.
Call to action, episode 11, with the one and only Rory Sutherland. Not what we were looking for, but hang on a minute. There we go.
In terms of there being a common thread, assuming there is one, is it the fact that it's a brand that's kind of challenging the category and going against the norm?
Yeah, massively. I think for me, like, I wouldn't, I absolutely like adored and loved, and it was really, really hard to leave Moju. I wasn't essentially like looking to leave and be like, right, I've got to go find, like, I'm fed up of this. That really wasn't the case, but I just think I needed to find, for me, it was always going to be a challenge, and I had to take that step out and be like, put myself in a bit of discomfort to be like, look, I want to like, further my career here. And then the opportunity at XOXO came about, and I was speaking to them for a bit, and essentially, interviewed, pitched myself, whatever you want to call it, against some really other big names in the FMCG world, like big top flight names, like Coca-Cola and like places like that and brands like that, where people, Heineken, and these people that had big brand mentalities, but they wanted me in terms of like what I'd achieved and what we were all achieving at Moju in terms of building the brand from scratch and building the category, and having someone that had that experience of really, really, building category. I mean, when I joined Moju, there was probably like 10, 12 of us. And then when I left, there was just shy of 50, 45 people maybe. And that's in the space of 3 and a bit years. So the growth was insane, and still is. I'll always be, the biggest Moju advocate. But then XOXO came about, and it excited me. It felt like how I kind of felt again when I was like, looking and applying to Moju, like something that's just like really different. It's not just another, product. It's something that's, can build that category. And, we've seen what, literally in the recent news, the recent days of the likes of Poppy and PepsiCo buying them for 1.5 billion or whatever it ends up being. I think it's actually closer to 2 billion mark now. It's like, it's an exciting, it's a really, really exciting category, is this sort of modern soda, contemporary soda, whatever you might want to call it. And I don't think it's really fully got a term yet, because I think it's still trying to find itself. And there's a big thing about it in terms of positioning, which is a big thing in marketing. It's like, what are we positioning ourselves as? Are we in that sort of like functional space? I think it's such a wide, which Moju falls into, and I don't know how much we can like talk about other brands. Hopefully it's okay, because I'm just going to keep saying brands, but like there's brands doing really big things like Trip and like, those sort of like functional spaces across different markets across the world. But I still think functional is still just a massive in like category in itself. Then it needs subcategories like the functional shots or the shots or whatever it might be. There is energy drinks, which are still probably the most original functional drinks. Like they give you energy to get on with throughout the day, and that change and shift in energy drinks turn into natural energy drinks, and so that's its own category. But they all feed up into this functional bay. Yeah, for me, there's a lot of positioning around where this modern soda and contemporary soda is, and we're doing a lot of work on that. And there's a lot of brands in the space. A lot of competition, which is great. For me, competition is just literally a good thing. You wouldn't have the Premier League, wouldn't have anything that existed without other teams in there competing. Likes of Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, Heineken versus, I don't know, Stella. I don't know why I chose Stella, but, there's always like, it's these big brands, and Poppy and Olipop in the States, like they've got to compete against each other, and you want that competition element, and that really excites me. And I don't get put off by competition. But yes, we do have a lot of competition in the space, but I think that space is still a bit cloudy in terms of, whether it's a kombucha, or this like a sort of like living soda, or a prebiotic or probiotic soda, or whatever it might be. There's still a lot of work to be done in terms of consumers understanding that. That's what excites me at XO, that we can be the leaders in that for sure in the UK market and across Europe, which we're already in. So yeah, it's really, really exciting. There's a lot of work to be done. It's the whole category building piece again, not just working for another, established brand. How can this product drive a category rather than it just be another product that, millions of other people are trying to get on shelf with?
Yeah, I think from the outside looking in, just through my eyes, it feels a little bit Wild West in that respect, in as much as, as you say, it's quite cloudy, and it feels quite scrappy in as much as probably isn't a very widely shared definition of what the market is, like what's defined by, and everything from shout out to a good friend of mine, Joe Wellstead, who has an electrolyte brand called Ocean, doing incredibly well. Like electrolytes could fit in there, kombucha, as you say, could fit in there, probiotics, like what is and isn't in this kind of space, and who isn't competing with each other. And then I suppose that almost emphasizes how significant both an opportunity, but how significant it is to build a brand. Because if you build the brand and the brand wins, then ultimately the product range will win subsequently. But does that put pressure on you in terms of product range? Because like, how many products do you currently have, and is there a limit on how many you feel like you can take to market at the moment while you're building the brand? It must be such an area of tension.
Yeah, it is a massive pressure, and again, it doesn't scare me. It's I just try to use any pressure as an excitement and a driving force. I mean, we've got 6 current flavors. We're actually about to bring out a 7th as NPD, launching very, very soon. So everybody strap in for that. You've got to have a good array of flavors, but you also don't want to have too many. And it was the same, again, it was going back to Moju, it was the same there. We had a lot of different flavors within their own categories. So we had like the immunity range, we had a gut range. And there's a lot of flavors that you're trying to go to all the retailers with. Obviously, in an ideal world, you'd want them to take every single flavor, but you're fighting for one facing, never mind 7. So it makes it tricky, but you also need to have enough of an offering that you could essentially walk into one store and have a few flavors, and then go to a different store and have different flavors, and that's what gives you that sort of like exclusivity. And then also for us, it can drive traffic to both, or several different retailers and stocking points. Then, and obviously on online, we've got the whole range that's available at any one point. But I think it's really good to have an array of flavors, because it is what excites the customer. And if you look at like what Olipop and Poppy done, and I think really especially Olipop in the States, is just churning out new flavors, because once you've built that community, people are coming back to try that time after time after time. It might even be the wackiest flavor of all, but because of the brand loyalty they got and that repeat purchase, and the household name that they're established for themselves, is that like it could be like burnt toffee flavor, something weird. I don't know. That might sound lovely to somebody, but like people order it and they'll sell out from it online, and it's crazy. And that's because of that brand loyalty. So they could have like 20, 30 flavors at any one point in the year, but they might not have all those in anyone's shop. But obviously the ultimate aim is to have a full shelf of all your products, which luckily we've got a few stockists here in the UK that do that, and it's great when you walk into a shop and you literally see all of them sat there proud side by side, and that's when you get a real full vision for it as well. You see all the colours. It's more than just like 1 or 2 cans. It's as in like the 2 flavors. It really shows you like the full scope of what we're doing and what we're working on, and then also just being able to turn on new flavors when we want to. Not that it's as easy as like having a new flavor tomorrow if we said about it today, but being able to be like, okay, let's do a lot of research into what those consumer trends are, and being able to sort of like bring something out to market, or possibly to market, by within 6 to 9 months. The ability to have mass amount of flavors is good. That's not to say that like everybody should start a brand with 16 different flavors. I think maybe you're always going to have your core flavors. It doesn't matter what Coca-Cola bring out, right? They've always going to have their main one and their diet, which is always going to be the top sellers. Never mind like whether they put lime in it, lemon, orange, or burnt toffee. Don't know why that's stuck in my head now, but maybe there's something in it. I wonder if I bet we come off this call, I'll jump on LinkedIn and somebody's brought out a burnt toffee brand. Yeah, so it does make, to go back to the question, it does make it difficult having all the different flavors and pressure whilst you're trying to build this brand, and like really, because you really want that sort of like core product. And obviously going back to Moju, that was the ginger shot. But then we had all the other products, that surrounded that and essentially helped bolster that product. We brought out like a hot mango, for instance, which was kind of like a gateway that we were hoping people to get to the ginger, because ginger is quite polarizing. Like it's a little bit like Marmite, you either love it or you hate it. But what we were trying to do there is literally be like, well, I know you might, even if the flavor like isn't to your taste, it's good for you. So like that was the whole point. It's like, so for me, my time at Moju and was all about trial. Whilst we were going, I know the question was to do with XO, but like going back to it, of the roots of Moju, and now where we're at with the roots of XO, is that we're just got to get it out there, because the flavor of XO is so good, and that's what we can really double down on. Is like it's a soda that tastes good and does good.
That Moju story is really interesting, especially with you might not like the taste, but it's good for you. There's a real kind of deep psychological thing happening there. I remember the likes of Mark Earls and Richard Shott and Rory Sutherland have given numerous examples around that, whether it's medicine or something else. But I remember reading, I think it was Rory talking about fly spray, which has
Yeah.
that disgusting kind of, you can almost taste it on your tongue and that
Yeah.
disgusting smell. They tried to release, because it's perfectly easy to create a fly spray that has a nice aroma, like a room kind of fragrance spray. But people didn't buy it because they almost need to psychologically think, oh Christ, if it tastes and smells that rough, what's it going to do to the fly? So
Yeah.
it's funny,
Yeah.
that kind of area of taste versus medicine.
Yeah, there is, and I think this is where the functional, like, sort of like this space has come in, and we played on that at Moju, and we brought out the bigger, the dosing bottle. We changed the shape of it from our like off the shelf, sort of like cylinder circular shape bottle to a custom shaped bottle, which is like flask shaped, a little bit like how mouthwash is shaped, and it's all to do with like that sort of like medicinal sort of like idea around it, the habitual routine of like you do it once a day, and that massively really plays into that sort of like medicinal sort of like concept, so it's similar to that. It's like you almost then know that it's going to do better for you because you're expecting it to, purely because of like little things like the shape of the bottle, or like you say, with the story of the spray, you think if it's going to smell nice, then it's not going to do good. But if it smells the way you think it should, and which is bad, or you can taste it on your tongue, like you say, like when you spray it, then you've bought the right product.
Yeah, it's so weird, isn't it? It's so warped. I want to talk to you about your run club. But before we do, I'm going to break with tradition slightly, because I've got a couple of listener questions, which are more around what we're talking about. So I'm going to quickly pop there now as a sidestep. Asking the general public for their opinion, be it on Brexit or boat names, is notoriously fraught with danger. We've got two for you, starting with Jamie, who asks, better for you, so functional products and brands are flooding the market, led by startups and scale-ups challenging the big players. What's their secret sauce? Why could Poppy do what PepsiCo couldn't? To quote the example you've already used.
Yeah. I mean, it's good because you've already, kind of touched on that. And it's quite interesting, the whole like acquisition of Poppy, and originally it was going to be Coca-Cola, and then they shifted and they brought out their own. They essentially shifted their strategy and invested in a product themselves, and then Pepsi have kind of come in and swept up on Poppy. It's a really good question in terms of like that startup versus big company. Is that, I think, and everyone thinks it. It's like, why don't big companies just do it? And I think it's down to credibility on community. So a lot of big companies, they find it very, very hard to build a community. They'll have built a very, very good, strong brand because it's been around for, before Coca-Cola, there was no other Coca-Cola. Before like Heinz, there wasn't another bean. So they were the original, they at the time were essentially a startup. They were just a brand that was just, disrupting the space and creating something new. And I think because they've got, decades and decades of history behind them, that they just gain that sort of like good lifetime value from customers. And it's only in recent years where like, really people have been like, why is there only one brand in that space? Like, why is there only one bean brand? Why is there only one fizzy drink brand? Why that owns everything? And that hence that sort of like startup world in the past 5, 10, 15 years. So yeah, it's a good question because why don't they just do it? I think they do. I think they try, and it just doesn't work. Well, I mentioned it again as well, like Coca-Cola will bring out a variety of flavors just to sort of like have that extra offering. But essentially everyone's going to go back to the normal Coke or the Diet Coke if they've tasted the orange and think it tastes weird. So that's their way of experimenting, but they don't do that to sort of like overtake their lead product. That's always going to be their biggest driver. So startups and founders and the team that founders build, because I think that's always a massive thing. I think everyone always wants to chat to founders and like value founders as like celebrities, but actually it really is a team that's really driving a brand. So hiring is key, hiring the right people. And I think hiring the right people in a startup is very, very different to hiring the people that are working in a big conglomerate. Like, it's just different strategies. We're able to have these ideas and start to bring them to life, on relatively low budgets. So I get the question again, and it is literally just a very classic question of like everybody thinking, why, if Coca-Cola have already got all the money and a massive team, why don't they just commission a few people just to purely focus on it? They're researching the market. They've got the money. They don't need to really be building something unless they don't have to. So they can research the market with these startups that are doing things, keep their eyes on them, keep tabs on them, and ultimately then acquire them when they've built a community strong enough that they can then take over and lead the charge on.
Yeah, I guess they prove concept, don't they? So they acquire that rather than going through all that kind of messy, potentially failing
Exactly, yeah, and they work, and they do, but they do that, and a lot of it just isn't seen. You'll see, like, so it'll come to it'll go to certain markets, in the world that other, when we go on holiday, right, you see versions of like Haribo that you don't get over here. So it'll work in certain markets and it doesn't work in some, and then they most likely pull the plug on it, and then, like I say, they'll then acquire a business when it's built up to enough that they will bring in them, warranted return on investment.
Yeah. Cool. Good answer. The second question is from Mel. Mel says FMCG has two sets of customers, retail customers and the retailer's customers. How do you convince the former to stock so that you can sell to the latter?
It's like a riddle.
At what speed is the train going, Shane?
Yeah.
No, it's a funny one though, because I've often wondered that. We have limited experience with retail brands, but yeah, getting something bought by a retailer versus getting something bought by the end consumer. Are there many differences there with how you approach the brand piece?
Yeah, I think the category there is massive. The consumer isn't massively bothered about the category, whereas as in the end consumer, but the retail customer is. As a brand and a product, we've got to provide to the retailer, our customer, that we deserve that shelf space. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of brands, and the barriers to sort of like creating a brand at the moment have never ever been lower, which is amazing. We could come up with an idea on this call, Giles, and then like tomorrow start to form a plan and have a business by next week. But with that said, because of that, it actually makes everything so much harder, because suddenly everyone's got a brand. So it's like, well, who do you listen to? Who's the best? Like, and that's obviously when hiring the right team comes in, but also having the best product. And I've touched on it with XO. It's like having that full flavor soda for us is our biggest strength. And that is the angle that we want to go down. And with our competition, it's nothing to do with like brand bashing or anything like that, and being like, where you should drink us, not them. Because if they want to go down their route, let them go down their route. We just need to stay focused on our path and our track. And that's having a full flavor soda, that does good for you. Just getting the retailer on board with that and how that grows the wider functional category. We don't really want to claim ourselves fully as this like drink where it's like it should be in like health stores and stuff. It's like we want it to be sat next to Coca-Cola. So that when somebody goes to buy it, they're switching it out and having us instead. So yeah, we've got to do our best, and obviously it's very, very hard. And it's quite funny because people that don't work in FMCG, like most of my mates, to be fair, they will be like, "Oh, why are you not stocked in Tesco? Or why are you not here? Why are you not there?" It's like as if it's just as easy to go to a random Tesco store and be like, "Oh, do you want to put us on shelf?" And then suddenly you're in 4,000 stores. It just does not work. It's so hard. And I think it's it is because there's so many brands trying for that same space. And ultimately, you've got those big players that are always guaranteed space, and you're trying to take it off of them, and that is guaranteed income for a retailer. So you've got to show a retailer how your individual brand, individual product grows that category as a whole, and how it is incremental to basket spend as well. And then for the latter, obviously the consumer, for us, that's when the marketing sort of like comes in, right? So we're trying to market ourselves as like, we want to show them we're the best of the best and a really fun brand, vibrant. And then once they have to see the brand, feel the brand before they try it. And then once they've tried it, it's all about the repeat purchase, having that lifetime loyalty, and people wanting to actively choose and drink us because of the flavor profile. So it's important for us to get the marketing right in terms of like how we appeal to our end consumers, but also what the retailers want to push as well. So they want to be part of this like massive movement, and and this massive acquisition from Pepsi from Poppy in the States is. Retailers will be looking at this and being like, "Wow, this is something like this is a space that's growing, and it's amazing. Like it's really exciting, and it shows you what is possible." So hopefully that answers the question, because it is a very, very tricky one. But I think in terms of the retailer, you want to show them the category and how important you are for the category, and not just another brand that's just had an idea about putting some sort of beneficial ingredients in a can or whatever it might be, in a packet or whatever it might be, because there is just so many. So you've got to really get retailers behind you and on your board, and it's quite hard. It's probably the hardest thing you can do. And then once you've done that, you've then got to maintain and have sales within that, so that you keep that shelf space. So it's really, very tricky, and then you don't get that shelf space without customers coming in and buying the product. So it's very tricky, but that's the hopefully that kind of like long-windedly goes around that question.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, it's a good answer. It's a good answer. It was never going to be an easy answer anyway. So no, it makes complete sense. I'm mindful, like we're coming towards not the end of the interview, but I'm mindful we don't have loads of time left. And it's really important to me, and I'm sure to you, to talk about the Run Club, which I mentioned in your intro, Step by Stepper. I think we could spend a whole podcast on this and we'd probably still scrape the surface of what it is, why it exists. And I'm mindful that people who aren't familiar with it might think this is quite a detour from what we've been talking about, but in every meaningful way, it isn't a detour at all, because this is you and you're the guest. So can you give us an overview of what Step by Stepper is and why it exists? Because I'm really keen to plug it.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I could talk about it for days, but also happy to do a quick top line on it. It's, so it might seem like a detour, but it really isn't, because it's everything I do at the moment is because of, sadly, I lost my dad a couple of years ago in 2023. And that has massively accelerated my commitment to what I do. So putting the full force of what I can achieve and do into everything I want to do. And that is, in my career, in my personal life. And losing dad was probably the hardest thing I've ever been through. He was my biggest fan. He was my mentor. He was my idol. He was, my cheerleader. He was every best mate. He was the last person I could ever possibly want to lose, and I lost him. So it was really, really tricky. But a big part for me, and we mentioned it before Giles, didn't we? Of like, I want to be able to talk about grief in a positive way. It's sad. It's an inevitable thing that's going to happen to everybody. And I want to be able to talk about it in an open conversation. So it might seem like it's switched like this pod, but actually it's not, because the whole reason of starting Step by Steppers, the Run Club in this community, was to bring people together. And to do that, I needed to make the Run Club, which I had no experience in sort of like running, pardon the pun, beforehand. I needed to make it look good. So I need to make it look like a brand, and brandify it up so it was trustworthy. For these people that are going through tough times, the whole premise of the Run Club is for people that have are either grieving, there's anticipated grief, there's a friend that's going through grief. It's about bringing all those sort of like people together that are feeling potentially quite isolated, and bring them together and finding joy through movement. So it's a Run Club as it stands, but I definitely want to advance it into different sectors and really have this like power of like movement and how that helps. Because essentially that is why I created it. It helped me. I was never a runner beforehand. I still don't really class myself as a runner. Like, it's just something that I now do and put as, it's part of my life. But because it helped me, and I'm not saying it will just instantly help everybody, because it helped me. But I really wanted to do something when I lost dad and turn that pain into positivity. I wanted to create something. I wanted to bring people together, and I wanted to put my sort of like, probably put my like brand experience into something for myself, but then is also helping others. So then Step by Steppers was born, and it's step by step sort of like through the Run Club physically, and then step by step through grief, and taking everything step by step and one thing at a time. So it links quite nicely back to the whole brand thing, and like really wanted to look and feel, and is a place where people can trust. And it might have been okay if I just suddenly put something out there and it wasn't really branded up, and it was like, hey, like I'm doing this thing. But in my mind, I wanted it to look like the shit, right? And I wanted it to look cool, and like I say, put my skills to the test, so to speak. Yeah, growing that has been a big part of like my sort of like, if you call it a side hustle or just part of my personal life, growing that, and working with other brands and partnerships to sort of like grow its awareness and reach new people as well. So it probably is actually quite a nice link through everything in terms of like, what dad meant to me, how it's changed my life. What I do there with that helps me in my professional career, as well as vice versa, it helping me in that one. So yeah, so it might seem like a jump, but actually it's quite a nice link.
No, and it's clearly something that propels you and is very much at the core. And I think, hats off to you. I salute you for what you've done. I think it's wonderful. But even if you hadn't taken the branding seriously, even if it hadn't taken off, even if it, you hadn't had any type of success, however you define success for steppers, I think even just the willingness to do it and to put something out there as a signal to dealing with grief has a hugely positive effect on anyone who sees it, as well as yourself. So the way you've combined both, I think is superb, and testament to you.
Yeah, well, thank you, mate. I really appreciate that.
And is Step by Step as something that you plan to continue to kind of invest your energy in? Is it there for people to to join? How can people find out how they get involved?
Yeah, I mean it's tricky. It's really hard to grow, which I know through growing brands in my professional career. It's not an easy thing. It's not an overnight thing. And every now and then you'll get this overnight success. And run clubs have become massive across the UK and even the world right now, which is amazing. And you get some really successful ones, just go viral. Sadly, I've not had a viral moment yet for that, but I'm sure the more we do, there's a chance of that. But that's not success for me, is not going viral. It's just about, it essentially, Giles, mate, if one person turned up to if I was expecting 100 people at my run club and one person turned up and they're going through something and they walk away or run away feeling better than they did before, then that's the whole point of what I'm trying to achieve there. So yeah, it's definitely something trying to keep pursuing. And, if I can take it nationwide. So at the moment it's in London as that's where I'm based. But it would be great for it to be like this sort of like nationwide, community and having these hubs in different cities and areas of the UK where people, can rely on.
Yeah, and also, I mean, to kind of share a similar experience I went through when we started Isolated Talks during the pandemic. There, and I'm not suggesting that you'll find yourself in the same position that I did, but I felt like it almost ended up causing more intended harm than good in some respects, not in all, because I felt a real pressure to keep it and to make it even bigger and even better. And the thing that luckily I realized in time was that actually the work had been done. Like it signposted to people towards other things such as the Samaritans and other wonderful charities that existed. The only thing I would say with this is the signal of success might just be you've signposted to a nearby run club and you might never know that it's happened and that someone has found you and chosen to find a local run club in, I don't know, Grimsby or someone miles away from where you actually live, and it's helped them process and navigate things. So I imagine that is also happening.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. And I said that as well. I was like, I'm not trying to be the next big run club, but I just know for a fact there's people at run clubs that are running because of something they've been through. So that to me is like them knowing that actually there's a run club or a community that is actually based around that. Then it gives them the opportunity to do that. But I also, to your point, anyone that comes to mine, or I don't like to say mine because it really is, it is a run club for the people. It wouldn't be anything without them. So I never like calling it my thing. Yeah, if somebody's seen it, or not even been to it and just seen it and gone, okay, actually, there's obviously value. This guy has been through something I've been through. There's obviously value in trying to do something here. And I think it's the fact that I wasn't a runner as well. Like if I had set it up and I've been running professionally for 10 years, then it's very, very different. It's a bit like, well, who's this? Like, of course you're
a bit more disingenuous. Yeah.
It's the fact that I actually didn't do anything beforehand. Like the only running I did was on a football pitch, and that wasn't much as well. I was quite lazy. But
you're one of them.
yeah, just hanging around the right wing waiting for the ball. Yeah, so it's just how it touches people in different ways. And you're right, like and it's great when I get messages or the community receives messages about like the way it's, how it's helped someone, but I'm not always going to get those messages. So I'm not always going to know how it has helped. But yeah, to your point, it most definitely has. And the fact that, all the followers that it's got, that's obviously helped the fact that it's helping somebody. So yeah, I take a lot from that.
Cool. Well, we will link to step by steppers in the show notes too. Thanks, obviously. Slightly mindful of time, we've got 4 pertinent poses, so let's just whiz through these. Number 1, what advice would you give to your younger self?
It is such a big question. Probably invest in Bitcoin. No, I'm joking. It's I think taking risks, nothing illegal, of course, but like not being afraid to fail. I know this all probably sounds quite cliche, but I think cliche sayings exist for a reason. And especially what I've been through and you've been through with grief and losing somebody, like these cliche sayings start to come to fruition a little bit more. So not being afraid to fail. For me, the word fail just has a negative association or connotation with it straight away. Like it sounds like a negative word because essentially it is. But actually, how can we change that and be like, we can learn some of our biggest lessons from failing. And I think I said earlier, like growth comes from discomfort. So failing is not a negative thing. So I think maybe that's the word advice, is like not seeing failure as something negative and bad, just even what others might say about it. It's actually not saying failing is okay and you've got to you just go out and keep failing at things, but it's like you've got to understand where you want to be or how you want to achieve things. And sometimes you've got to fail to get to the next point. So yeah, I think it's probably, not seeing failure as a negative word.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, there's a lot of truth there. If you could banish one thing from the industry, what would it be and why?
Brand bashing. I can't stand brand bashing. I can't stand when other brands put their time and commitment into trying to slate other brands. Just focus on your own brand. If you've got the best brand and product at the end of the day, you'll be all right. So yeah, I really don't like it. And that was a big thing that we in previous roles and roles that I'm at now and in the future is just never brand bash. There's absolutely no need for it. Obviously, when you're in the office, you're going to say like, why your brand's better than others. But yeah, I think there's just no need to spend time brand bashing and trying to out us. If you put that focus into yourself, you'll be all right.
Nice. Very good. Number 3, I'm not sure if you're a reader, but are there any books that you can recommend to our listeners? They can be brand marketing books or anything.
Yeah, I am a reader. I buy probably 20 books at a time and read half of them. So I have this massive, looks like an amazing book collection, but I've actually only got to halfway through of all of them. I just get so excited when a new book comes out or I start and then something else happens. And then I do try to read 2 or 3 different types of books at any one point, which probably isn't the best way. But yeah, so I am a reader. So I think the best one for me, and I always kind of recommend it, is Chimp Paradox.
Yes.
Mind Management by, is it Professor Stephen Rogers, something like that. I actually read that as listened to that as an Audible. That was the very first Audible I listened to, and then I got the book and read it as well, and it completely changed.
What did you name your chimp? Can I ask?
I didn't actually.
Okay, fair enough.
No, I don't think I ever named him. I think maybe to be fair, it was at the time it was a guy that I really didn't like because of something that happened. But yeah, the name's gone out of my head. But it's the book completely changed my mindset on how at that time of this is pre-dad, because it's changed even more so since losing dad. But yeah, it changed my mindset on how I approach every situation, how to maintain composure and sort of look at the bigger picture. Because essentially, not everything is all it may seem with people and their reactions to things, and that's the biggest thing about how being able to read them and read the room, right? But yeah, that was a big one for me, and I recommend it a lot. That's always my go-to recommendation.
Nice, love it. And then number 4, lastly, we always dedicate every episode to someone, and we bestow that honour to our guest who have to give the reason why. So would you kindly dedicate this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be cruel not to dedicate this to my dad.
Of course, yeah.
I'd like to say, there's mentors and people that I've had, the past couple of years, and where I've got to. But without dad, none of it. It's like an acceptance speech now. It's like, without my dad, I wouldn't be getting this Grammy or whatever. But yeah, he was just the best person ever, and I really wish I almost wish he could be on this pod with me, and you'd see that he was such a good guy, and he'll always be my reason why now. So everything I do is pretty much dedicated to him. So yeah, it's got to be for the big man.
Amazing. Well, this episode is very proudly dedicated to your dad. That was
touching.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you, mate.
Thank you. Well, so as a final call to action, we will share links in this podcast release to everything we've discussed, including Step-by-Steppers, Chimp Paradox. We'll ping them any other ways that they can get more Shane Stewart. What does that include? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, yeah. Anyone that's, I suppose, resonated with the grief story. I'm quite openly talk about grief on my in my personal Instagram now. So yeah, trying to build that sort of community up there, as well as side by side with Step-by-Steppers. So yeah, and then anything brand related is obviously then on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Well, listen, I hope I'm a huge fan of Step-by-Stepper. I've really enjoyed this chat. I've got quite a few things highlighted here, but humping bananas is leaping out. But I've really enjoyed this. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us, mate.
Yeah, mate. Thanks very much for having me. It's been it's been a pleasure. It's been fun.
Good. And thank you to everyone listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do share and review the podcast. Keep your questions and guest requests coming in. To get in touch, it's easy to find Gasp online or email calltoaction@gasp.agency.
I can't get no call to action. I can't get no call to action. action, but I try, and I try, and I try, and I try. I can't get no call to action. Oh, I can't get no call to action. Yeah, hey, hey.